Okay.
Oh, I see what the difference is. I've got Joe's name under me.
Yeah. So if you could,
Yeah,
log out,
let
it
me
looks
do
like
that.
Phil didn't have a problem. So
You can
Right.
rename, they can rename
back in.
themselves in there. You can do
Okay.
it too. Whoever is the meeting host, they can just rename them.
yeah, well, I think it bounces back between Joe and Phil, I think.
Just rename them inside of Zoom so that we know who they are. It won't matter.
Let me see if I can do that.
Yeah. Just click on that right. There's
Yeah.
3 dots in the top right hand corner. Go to
John.
rename.
Let me see if it works here, John. Okay.
Thanks.
Brad, you're such a smart ass. All right, so who do we have here from council? We have Ms. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Crown. Pretty sure I saw him.
Yes.
Okay. Anthony Saba, Edward Alo. Is it Ed here?
No.
He might here. Hold on. He popped up. Ed's
Hey, I'm
here.
here.
Mayor Bloom's here. And I'm present. And we have Manager McKibben and Assistant Manager. Are you here? Where are you?
He's here.
Okay. And all right.
That's everybody. Let's roll.
All right, cool. All right, so Manager McKibben, you got the floor. What do you have for us this evening?
Well, thanks for everyone for attending tonight. If I sound a little crazy, it's just I got a couple teeth taken out today. I'm sorry. I'll soon be the abominable snowman, I think, after all these years. But anyway, speaking for Doug and I, we would like to avoid line item budgets tonight and concentrate on a desire to take out a long-term debt and how we're going to pay for it. And for that reason, that's why Mr. Miller, Mr. Benstead, and I think there's another person from Huntington Bank on the line, Mr. Angelo, to assist in any questions, because quite frankly, some of this stuff we understand, and some of this stuff is just a little bit beyond our expertise, and that's why we hired them, and that's why they're here, and I appreciate them coming. I think Doug and I can both say that after last week or 2 weeks ago, we have a pretty good grasp of where general fund monies, revenues, and I guess debits, for lack of a better word, expenditures would be a better word, will come in for 2021. However, some of the decisions that we have to make and bring back to you guys is dependent on the discussion tonight on the bond issue, how much it's going to be, how we're going to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. These are important items because it goes to our general fund expenditures for interest for the expense of the bond, quite frankly. We're going to have a yearly commitment for this for depending on 20, 25, 30 years, depending on how we do it. And again, that's why the Huntington people are here. But it's important to the bottom line for us. With that said, I think I'm going to let Doug go over the overview of where we're at on the bond, if we take a bond out, and how much we take it out for. If there are any questions, I think they will probably be directed to Joe, John, and Philip, and I'm sure they'll assist us in that matter. Once we get a final decision on that, we have 2 more Wednesdays after next week to get down into minutia of about, whether we're going to spend $100 or $250 on paper and all the other stuff that sometimes are important to people, but really in the scheme of things, really are minor things in the overall budget of what we're going to present for a final vote in early December. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug, who has been an important person in putting a lot of these things together. And Doug, I'm going to hand it over to you to go over, do an overview of the capital projects and what we're looking at if and when we do a bond issue. Thanks.
Thanks, Russ. Yeah, you teed that up very nicely. So what was sent out tonight or today or this evening, earlier this evening, was all of the bond projects that we have incorporated to date. And as you can see, we're about $9 million in borough funds, with about $18 million in total projects, and with a grant offset of about 9 million as well. So that being said, I might just kick it right over to Joe Miller here. What Russ and I need is, are we okay with the $9 million in projects? And then that would be question A. Question B is, how do we want to finance that through the bond? Joe has laid out 4 different scenarios with a stepped up debt service or a level debt service based on 25 years and 30 years. So I guess the first question is, are we comfortable with what we've got laid out in the projects?
Doug, because we have attendees who don't know what's on that list, would it be possible to just do a real quick rundown?
Yes.
Of what we're talking about here? Thank you.
Can you do
Okay.
share what you have on the screen? Or?
That's what I was actually going to ask, because I was trying to pull up that Excel spreadsheet that was sent out.
While you do that, Ed, I'll just kind of start walking through them. Just in here, we've got the pool liner and pool building, which is about $425,000, but that's actually an offset with grant funding. We have the Sycamore sewer separation. That's a small amount of $50,000. We've got the borough building, which would be repointing of the building, as well as the furnace and some interior upgrades, carpeting. It's the same carpeting since I was there 15 years ago. That's a total estimated cost of $280,000. We have $180,000 on a grant offset. We're looking at a reconstruction of Belvedere. That would be curbs, sidewalks, and street reconstruction. That's at a cost of approximately $685,000. Clearview extension, the sidewalk replacement, that's at about $25,000. We have sections of Bar Avenue where we're doing pavement, curb, and sidewalk. The first section is Sterrett to, and that's about $225,000. We've got a section on Bar to Chest Street. It's about $215,000. Bar from Willard to Harris, again, it would be pavement, curb, and sidewalk replacement, $200,000. Or again, Kiever to Harris, $100,000. Again, the curb, sidewalk, and pavement. The section on Sterrett going from Clearview to Bar, $145,000. And then from Bar to Poplar on Sterrett, $200,000. storm drainage improvements on Alley A at about 35,000. We've got 2.5 million is what we've titled municipal facilities. This would be public works in an improved alley, recreational type facilities. We've got the Woodlawn sewer separation. That project is 2.5 million with 2 million coming from the grant. And curb, sidewalk, and road on Park Street. This would be the brick section at about 200,000. Oregon Avenue, again, a total reconstruction, a little over 500,000. Reconstruction on Warren Street, the brick section, 335,000. Emerson, again, total reconstruction, 300,000. The Crafton Boulevard separation project, which is 3.7 million, but we have a grant offset of 2.9 million. The streetscape coming up Crafton Boulevard at about 400,000, and this would be in conjunction with the Crafton Boulevard separation. We would add some traffic calming, some trees, some beautifications from what would be the school up to Clearview. The Broadhead separation, which is a $3.8 million, a grant offset of 2.8 million. And then lastly, the Crafton Park sewer separation again, which is $1 million, and we're looking at $750,000 in a grant offset. So again, just those totals, we're looking at construction of $17.8 million, grant offset of $9.1 million, and our share would be a little under $9 million. So a significant amount of infrastructure, and this is infrastructure, both as you can see, and then as well as the sewer separation projects. Windsor, very popular, and again with Elkazan and those grant offsets.
Hey, Doug, I have a question.
There we go. Thank you. I think that's the most I've talked about 3 days here. So.
So just kind of from like more clarification for the public, what I've heard a lot of was two things. One, a lot of this is because we are awarded a lot of grants. So what we're covering is a lot of our match. So we're taking advantage of a lot of money that's out there and bringing it back to our community. But something I kind of want you to elaborate on, if you could, a little bit more, is a lot of the roads you had mentioned reconstruction. Why, we're doing a reconstruction versus just, so to say, putting another thing of pavement down?
That are identified here are brick streets that are really beyond repair. It's just not spot repair anymore. Anybody who's been on Belvedere, Oregon, can tell you it's the base is bad. So you have to dig down, take all of that old material out, and put the rock down, the base down, and so those are the roads that it's just not a mill and pave job. These roads, 120, 100 years old.
All right. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Anthony. All right. Well,
And if, one other quick thing, if you notice what
Doug.
Ed had put up here.
We're actually having, I'm actually having a hard time hearing Doug.
Doug, I'm sorry, your volume is very low.
That's gone.
you went the other way.
But so kind of basically what it's
You're muted,
what I can
Doug.
hear from.
No, he's not.
So basically, it sounds like what Doug's saying is a lot of the roads, it's the right way to fix them is it's a necessity versus a want that we have to reconstruct these roads.
Well, let me just interject. Doug's volume was very low, but I think I can explain a little bit with a better volume. To just simply pave these streets with a 2-inch pave over a street that's totally destroyed would make no sense at all. There's just no way that can happen. The bricks need to come out. The base needs to be redone. The curbs are shot. They're sandstone curbs. These are streets that have just been let go for many, many years. And there's just no way that you can just put that in the road fund that generates about $500,000 a year and put an overlay of asphalt on these streets. It would be creating a roller coaster and potholes. I think that is basically what Doug was trying to say.
Yeah, and to add more color to that, I mean, we all know that. Sorry, Coletta, did I interrupt you?
No, just go ahead and then I'll ask my question.
Okay. Yeah, I think, we've ample engineering justification. I mean, the assets have come to the end of their useful life cycle, and it's time to rebuild. And we have an awesome opportunity where we are right now to pursue that option. And I'm excited that we have been able to garner so many grants to help us put in modern infrastructure beneath the surface. But now it's incumbent upon us to put in the resources to improve the surface, including the roadways, the curbs, and the overall aesthetic of the community. So, I think we're in good hands here with the management team that we have, the consultants that we have on board, and I'm excited to hear from Joe to sort of help us understand how Huntington Capital can help us make the right come to right financial conclusion as to what option fits our goals as a community here. So with that, can we Joe, do you want to introduce your team to the council as a whole here and to the community?
Yes.
After Coletta.
All right.
Okay.
So, totally understood that what we're looking at is because whatever we're going to do right now has to encompass the most major projects that need to be done in the next number of years, because you just don't go back to the well. My big question when I'm looking at particularly the pavement, do we think that we have really included everything that we're going to need to do in this life cycle of this bond? I mean, I know that you guys have really been working on it. Phillips on reporting, you guys have been going around, doing walkthroughs, but when I look at this list, it's like, okay, is someone going to come at us and say, well, you guys are talking about these streets, but what about this street? So I just kind of want a little feedback about that. And then I had one last question on Broadhead and Crafton Park, because we have red down here. It's my understanding that these are estimates and they've not gone fully through the process. Is that those two things?
Yeah, so we have all the preliminary engineering, but we need to get Alcosan's final say on what they want and how they see it in the end.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Mr. McKibben. Yep.
Yes, Coletta, great question, honestly. And let me be clear here. What this bond is covering is total reconstruction. This does not take away the regular maintenance in the road fund that would do the asphalting of streets that just need redone and have a good base, and et cetera, et cetera.
Understood.
I think that's very important, and your question is very legit. These are streets that we just have no choice but to take down and bring up the base and make it correct. We have other streets that probably, yes, they could be skimmed, that's not the word, help me.
Overlaid.
Yeah, thank you. Overlaid, the asphalt taken up and redone. We will still have that budget in place too. That has nothing to do with this bond issue at all. Those regular maintenance items are part of the general fund budget and nothing to do with this bond issue. Moreover, there's 2.5 million in there for public works. There may be ways that we can make that number go down. We have to explore that. That's just preliminary numbers. There's other ideas out there. And to that end, I think that's a number that may not stand pat at all. But yeah, great question. But no, regular maintenance of roads
Right.
to be done are not impacted on this.
Yeah, I understood that. I guess my question is, are there any other streets in the borough that are going to need this level of reconstruction that we've kind of said, oh, well, maybe we can push that out 10 years?
There may be, and we may have to identify them as well.
I think Coletta's point is well made in the sense that nothing is actually static. There's no end to it. And in some ways, things will continuously always need to be, reevaluated in the sense that, I do concur with the point of view that if there's any other, it's like a wish list almost, like the Christmas list, like this is your chance. So if there's anything else you want, let me know now before Santa brings you the toys, because we're not going back to the store. And so yeah, I would like to just, to make sure that, if there's any other bad outliers out there, we should take a look at them as well.
And I do understand there is a pivot point about what we can responsibly borrow versus what the pie in the sky is. Philip, I know you've been involved in this. I mean, what's your assessment? I mean,
I think this takes care of 70% of all the outstanding needs. If we were to go and completely reconstruct everything that's out there, we would exceed our borrowing capacity, and I'm sure Joe could talk to what the debt acts are and how that works in the Commonwealth. So we have a limited capacity with what we currently have on the plate. I think we could go to the voters and ask for more. But again, I think Joe could probably speak to that. But I think what we have here is this covers a significant number of projects. It checks the marks on where we're going to need to be with the DOJ, EPA consent orders, getting ahead on that with Alcosan. I mean, it improves the quality of life throughout the borough, and not just in isolated segments of the borough. And again, as the manager indicated, some of these streets are going to be able to be more managed through the annual road program. So smaller reconstructions will be able to be addressed through a $200,000 reconstruction project. In a given year, we may have to choose over the next decade, like which street gets to be the top street on the road program. But we know all of these streets that we've outlined this evening and over the past couple of years, all need to be done,
they're the worst of the worst.
Right. Yeah. And if we let them go for another 5-10 years, the quality of life on those streets is
Dude, I had someone blow a tire out just driving on my street about a week ago. One of my neighbors just blew their tire out on my street.
Yeah.
Like straight up came to my door and said, I blew my tire out when we fixing the street. And I was like, we've hit rock bottom, folks.
Yeah, I mean,
it's bad.
Yeah, I don't mean to belabor it, but it's again, because it's a public meeting, also that it's a recording and people are going to have questions. I just want to make sure that we're as clear as possible. So
yeah, I mean, we could have easily come to council and said we need $5 million more to get everything on the wish list. But given the limitations that Joe will talk about, I put it as the limits of safety. We want to be cognizant of where our market is, where, you know, we need to maintain quality of life, improve quality of life responsibly, you know, within our means. And I think what we've laid out here is within our means. And we'll reevaluate where our real estate market is in the next 5 to 10 years. And potentially there'd be another opportunity for a major capital improvement plan. And obviously the things that we put here are, you know, we're looking at, they'll exceed 25, 30 years. We can honestly go to the market and say these are, like, you know, long-lived assets. That's another thing that goes into this decision-making process. What is the longevity of an asset? You know, when we're looking at these things, we're hoping these things last longer than 25, 30 years. We're looking at 50 to 100-year assets. And so, you know, hopefully we don't have to go back to Oregon, because we did it, and the next, my kids or grandkids will be revisiting it, but hopefully not while I'm still here.
And speaking of, just as an aside, we have a prominent house that went on the market, was not on the market for a week, and went over asking price. And that's a trend that we've been seeing here for a while.
Yeah. And I think we gave the public a taste of what we've been talking about for the past several years. South Grandview is the model we're going for when we're talking about reconstructions. I think we all can be very proud of that investment. And, you know, now it's just, you know, the hard work begins. We have the plans. You know, we thought that was the hard work, but really what happens here once we go to the market and hopefully get the capital infusion here, that's going to be, you know, a lot of work. But we're very close. I think the list that we have is reasonable, and that's all I'll say, because I think, you know, we just need to figure out what the budget's going to look like. We can't go back to, you know, the the line items until these guys know what this payment looks like.
Absolutely. Thank you for unpacking everything, Doug and Russ and Philip.
Yep, no problem. All right, Joe.
Right, thank you, Phil. And yeah, that's a good segue, as a matter of fact, into, you know, what we'll be discussing here this evening in regard to, you know, what is the budgetary impact, you know, immediately when you issue the debt for the projects, and then of course moving forward as well. So just to step back, you know, I'll introduce myself and the team, and then we will go over, you know, the most recent information that we had presented to the borough with regard to just that, the repayment of that debt and how it fits into the budget and the budget process. And then, you know, any questions, comments, you know, feel free to let us know. We're certainly on to help as part of your team and to address any questions or comments that you have. So yeah, my name is Joe Miller. I work with Huntington Bank, and in my role with Huntington, I work out of the government and nonprofit banking group. And for me in particular, it means I am responsible for providing banking solutions to governmental entities here in Western Pennsylvania. And that could be anything from your main operating accounts up through and including large project financing through the issuance of municipal bonds. And that, of course, is what we're on this evening to discuss. And I thank you kindly for having us on this evening to speak with the borough. You know, we've been in contact with folks at the borough for some time now, working out various scenarios, that being Manager McKibben, Assistant Manager Sample, as well as Phil, and going over different scenarios with those gentlemen in the effort to get us where we're at today. And so information was provided as recently as yesterday, and that I believe is what we'll be discussing in some more detail this evening. And when I say we, also on the line with me are two gentlemen that are colleagues of mine that work with me at Huntington, specifically out of our municipal bond department through Huntington Capital Markets. And those two gentlemen are John Benstead and Phil Angelo. Both John and Phil have been a part of the process really since the beginning in the effort to put together these various scenarios and introduce our capabilities that we could bring to the table when we work with governmental entities to finance these very important public projects. So with that, the three of us are here this evening and avail ourselves to any questions or comments along the way. However, if you wanted to take a look at and visit the information that we most recently provided, that was 4 different scenarios, all of which are based off of $9 million going into a project fund that the borough will then use to pay for these projects as they move them through from start to completion. So $9 million in a project fund. And we looked at it a few different ways as was referenced earlier here this evening, a 25-year repayment schedule and a 30-year repayment schedule. And under each of those repayment schedules, both the 25 and 30-year, we showed various ways that we could construct a repayment schedule for you. One is pretty straightforward. It's just level repayment. So right from year 1 through the final maturing year, the payments are what are deemed to be level. So they're level set, roughly the same dollar amount each and every fiscal year for you to budget. The other scenarios within that 25 as well as the 30-year time frame are ramping up that debt service over the first few years, thereby which giving the borough some flexibility with regard to its tax rates and or sewage rates, as they may have to be increased over that time frame instead of doing it all at once, which would have the most impact on the residents, to easing into it and perhaps doing it in increments so as to alleviate that burden. And this way, it also alleviates the burden on the budget as well. So your payments are lesser in the first few years that you have to budget. And a few years into it, you'll see that they eventually level off through the final maturity. So those were just some ideas that we had and wanted to bring to the table for the borough to consider in its effort to determine what would be the best way to not only finance these projects, but also the best way from a budgetary perspective to repay the debt as well.
Manager McKibben.
Yeah, I think it's kind of important for everyone to know why Joe, Phil, and John are here. They used to be Joe, especially I knew, but the other two as well, in some respects. They were former PNC people who we have a lot of relationships with, and who did a lot of work with municipalities in the region. They have formed a group that does the same thing with Huntington and allows them to work with municipalities and do it in a way that, for lack of a better word, do it in a way that helps us. I don't think that genre is there anymore with PNC Bank. That's just my opinion. But these guys and their institution have made a serious attempt to make sure that municipalities are a priority, knowing that I can't speak for their bank, but I can speak for a few of the gentlemen that it's important for them, and to try to do the right thing for municipalities and nonprofits, I believe also. So there's an old relationship there, yes, but their presentations from the get-go were just superior, and I just want everyone to know that's why our recommendation is where it's at.
Thank you very much for the recommendation, Russ. We greatly appreciate it, and that's exactly right. You know, our biggest concern is that we certainly do the right thing by you as a customer of ours to make sure that, you know, everything goes as smoothly as possible, and we provide you with the best and brightest ideas that we possibly can, and those will be the best and brightest in the industry.
Okay, Doug, I think you wanted to say something?
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Sort of.
Damn, I don't know what's going on with this computer today. What we'd be looking at is about a 1 mil increase, half mil on the general fund side and a half mil on the road fund side. Probably we would not be looking at a sewer increase, so it would just be on the millage. So we're looking at 1 mil overall, which on a house that's 150,000, you're talking $150 a year is what we'd be looking at to fund these projects. The millage would be dedicated. The millage would go towards the debt service. So that's where your tax increase would be going to.
Okay. So, I mean, let's get down to brass tacks here. When Joe is talking about the stepped versus the level, you know, and we have the 25 and the 30-year option. Can you guys speak to how that impacts the budget over the next 5 to 10 years?
Hey, Phil, before that, I actually had a question on that particular topic.
Okay.
It's a little more clarification if they can provide that. So between the level versus the step up, the bottom line, like what is the financial difference long term? Are we talking something like a small, like we're saving a small amount, or it's going to cost us more one over the other? So if we can kind of just break that down, what the real financial difference is.
Joe, could you bring up that PDF that you shared with us and look at the bottom lines?
I should be able to. Let's see.
And while you're doing that, we'll have the Kraus Entertainment in the back.
As it does that, I can speak to the bottom line of the scenarios we presented to you. For the 25-year final maturity or tenure of, the difference between the stepped increase of annual debt service compared to overall level debt service. The average annual debt service for the stepped is $470,000 a year. Whereas, and the average the average, okay, yeah. And I'm sorry,
Well, I was gonna say, John, it's probably just easier if Joe can bring it up, that way everybody can kind of just follow along. I mean,
but basically between the average debt services on the two scenarios for the 25-year is about $1,000 to $2,000. whereas the difference between the average annual debt services for the 30-year scenarios is about 5,000.
Yeah, and you know, Joe's chart should illustrate that. I mean, the key principle is just, you know, for example, if you're borrowing the money longer, paying it off slower, there's going to be, you know, the overall cost will be a little bit higher. So going from 25 years to 30 years, you know, that money is being borrowed for a longer amount of time. So there's going to be, you know, the ultimate payback will be higher. But at the same time, you know, you weigh that with, well, you have less annual debt service, you know, so, and same with the difference between the stepped up debt service versus level debt service. You know, stepped up, you know, so you're kind of slowly paying it off and you start to ramp up. So again, you're going to be borrowing money longer. So, you know, and not huge differences we're talking about in the grand scheme of things. It's just what it comes down to is, you know, internally, the flexibility it can afford, or maybe like, you know, for the initial years, the kind of breathing room it gives you with cash flow. I mean, that's what it really ultimately, I'd say, comes down to. And there's Joe's kind of, there's our 4 different scenarios, which I think kind of illustrates it very well.
Right. Yeah. These are the 4 scenarios that we had sent out to the borough just yesterday, the ones that I had referenced just a few minutes ago. So you'll see that the first 2 scenarios are for the 25-year repayment schedules. The first one being the stepped debt service, the second one, the level, and then the 2 on the right, basically the same thing, but for a 30-year repayment. So to address the question directly, I would just direct everyone's attention to that bottom line itself and look at the total debt service numbers. So under, say we just compared the 2 on the left, so the 25-year stepped, you have 11,
Yeah, could you
745.
Could you increase the size to 100?
I can, yes.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yep, and then I'll just scroll it down there. So you have 11,745,000 under the stepped and 11.7 million under the level. So you're actually taking on an additional $45,000 in order to go with the stepped type scenario. Now, if you want to see what the differential is there, I'll direct the attention to the period ending column, the one on the far left. Those are basically the debt service for each and every year, period ending December 31, 21, 22, and so on, and what that debt service looks like. So over the first few years, you'll see it's going to be in 2021, under that scenario, you would budget $202,161 versus a level set of $467,581 year 1. And then in year 2, 2022, you would budget $281,594 versus the level set of $466,781. So you just follow that, and it does take time, year 5, before it really hits the full debt service and levels itself out through final maturity. And then through year 5 through 25 in this scenario, you are going to pay about $30,000 extra each year from a budget perspective in order to get that budgetary relief up front. But again, bottom line, about $45,000 more is what you're going to pay overall to have that structure. And the flexibility of easing into the debt service and the impact on your budget. And then the same holds true for the 30-year. But of course, under the 30-year, you're going to see even smaller payment numbers because you are stretching that repayment over 30 years as opposed to the 25. So the numbers there you're going to see are a little more. And just direct the attention to the bottom line under those two scenarios. And the difference there is a little bit more between the stepped and the level. You end up paying a total of $12,454,180 bottom line for the stepped and $12,324,902 for the level. And you can see how it phases in from year number 1 through year number 5 on that as well.
So the question then becomes, which one of these, I'm just going to categorize them in two broad buckets, the 25-year and the 30-year bucket. Which one of these two buckets would be more palatable for our budget in the first 5 years, basically? Because that's after year 5, you see everything start to even out. But it's really about, kind of taking a small bite of the apple up front budgetarily, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Not to have a full budgetary impact right from the very beginning.
Right. So for just to spin this off real quick to Doug or Russ, I'm going to throw this in your ball in your court here. What's your guys' input budgetarily as to what option suits you guys, or it doesn't not make any difference?
We would want to look at the 30-year debt service, and there's no prepayment penalty. So, which is after 5 years, we can refinance if we so choose, but there's no prepayment penalty. So we definitely want to look at the 30-year bond, and that fits in with the projects that we're talking about. And it's really, do you want it's coming down to where the tax increase would come into play. If we did the mill right now, I would suggest the level debt service because that number. If you wanted to put off or ramp up a $500,000 this year and a $500,000 next year, then you'd want to go with the stepped debt service.
Right. And I would also just ask you all to look at a number that I don't think was pointed out, and that is the interest number at the very bottom. I think it's very important, and understanding that the interest at this point in time is as low as it's probably ever going to be. And that's why that difference is quite nominal over either both the 25 or 30-year period. That interest is actually our cost besides the principal. That's our payment to whomever. Whoever may buy these bonds. And of course, it becomes less as we go 30 years. But to Doug's point, on a general fund basis, it's usually important to us to understand whether or not we can graduate into this, or do we start out with the payment up front that is going to be level for the entire period. In this COVID environment, my opinion, again, it's council's decision, but in this COVID environment, not understanding or having no idea how revenues are going to be impacted over the next year or two, I would be in favor of looking into a stepped environment at this point, based on both the unknown of the revenue and also the unknown of with the COVID environment, and the fact of the impact on the millage rate itself. That's just an opinion, but again, it's council's decision as to what they think would be best for everyone. And I'll let Joe or anybody else comment on what I had to say, whether they agree or disagree.
Well, I have a quick question here. When I'm looking at these tables here, could you expect the bottom line on principal when it says, like 9,040,000, 9,285,000, 9,100,000, and et cetera. What are we looking at there? Is that what?
Yeah, you're looking at the amount of the bonds that were issued in order to obtain $9 million in your project fund. So the dollar amount of the actual par that's going to be issued is going to vary depending upon the costs of issuance that it's going to cover. And it's also going to be based upon the actual pricing of the bonds. So bonds could be priced at a discount. They could be priced at a premium. So that's why there could actually be different principal amounts for each of these scenarios. And I'll let either John or Phil add some color to that if they would like.
Yeah, overall, the pricing for these bonds was done this Monday, obtained from the desk, their market as of Monday. They are premium bonds from top to bottom. So what happens is you have the interest rate or the coupon, but they can be priced at a premium, 110% or so. That would make the yield of the bonds lower. You would get, say, if you had $100 of bonds there, the premium, you would get $10 off that because the investor is valuing that coupon more than the yield he or she would receive.
I'm sorry, John. Can I just boil this down maybe because I mean I know that area a little bit more than a few others, but here's the bottom line. We're guaranteed 2%. That's the coupon. Interest rates rise to 3%. Then bonds are at $100. So therefore, you're going to buy the bond at a lower rate because the interest rate has gone up. So your yield is different than the bond price. The bond price is 2%. That's
the difference.
guaranteed.
Just the difference between the two is what you're saying.
Well, it's a difference on the investor.
Right, but I'm saying if
I don't think bond prices are going to. I don't think bond prices are going to go below 2%.
Right.
I may be wrong, but if they go to 4 or 5%, then the bond price itself, if on the open market, price at par, goes down. They'll buy that at $85, and the yield is different at that point. So that's the difference there. Is the bond market is not like the stock market. It's totally different, but
it's a lot more conservative.
It is in some respects, and that's why this is an incentive. These are guaranteed and they're tax-free.
It's like it's a base in a plan where when a lot of investors, when they're building their plans, they look at bonds, especially municipal bonds, because let's be honest, governments don't tend to go bankrupt as much as companies. So when, from an investor standpoint, in this type of environment that we're in today, it's very attractive. And so just a couple things. I mean, if we're looking at just the interest rates alone, I mean, if anybody who recently purchased a home and is looking to fix up their house, typically they don't go and pull out cash from the bank and just dump all the money into the house. They usually approach a bank and borrow money. If you look at the market now, it's on average anywhere from 5 to 7% to do what we're doing at 2%, which is quite a difference. And it's a really wise and smart financial decision from the borough standpoint, because what we were presented is a lot of projects that are not wish list stuff. They are necessity in order to invest in this borough, as many homes as we've seen during COVID have been selling at record rates. So as a municipality, we need to make sure that we're investing just as much as our new residents and our homeowners are, in our roads and infrastructure. And breaking down, if you actually, there's roughly, it's between the 25-year and 30-year, it's about a difference of roughly $700,000.
Right.
But I was going to say also, with the question that I have for our management team is, we're investing this money in, I guess you can call them assets. What is the life cycle of what we're investing in?
Yeah, these are 50 plus year assets that we're installing. So on the street side, anything on the public works side, or recreation are at least 30 plus years. So I think the maturities that we're looking at are the correct vehicles here. My question is, just getting down to, I just wanted to sort of, my point of asking the question on the principle was, are we getting are we being paid a premium, or are we paying them a premium?
They're all premium bonds, so that means that you are being paid a premium.
Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
Right. So these are, the market's looking at this favorably. So to everybody out there in TV land, that's what this means. This is, and to reiterate, Anthony's point, and again, this is a good time to do it because we're actually it's favorable to us as an entity right now. So, when you're looking at the two debt services that, basically we would receive, are you saying that in February we would receive, let's say, $9,285,000 if we chose the debt service in option 1B?
No.
Or I'm calling it 1B. 25-year. Can you scroll up a little bit?
Oh, okay. I see it, Bill. Yeah, $9,285,000. No, under all four of these options, the borough would receive $9 million.
Okay.
In its project fund. Under that scenario, however, $9,285,000 is the par amount that would have to be issued in order to do that.
Right.
So it's covering, cost of issuance and so forth out of there. So
to the manager's point, the 30-year with the level, or probably the steps, if you could scroll up, can't, the headers are missing. You can just scroll up there.
Scroll up. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
and we have, this is really just a snapshot of the repayment schedules, basically to fulfill a request from the management team for the preparation of their budget and this meeting. Of course, we can certainly provide the detail behind these numbers. You may recall, Phil, when we got together to go over this, I think initially we provided a sources and a uses section as well. The sources were your source of funds, how you're getting those funds in, and of course the uses were to where they're being dispersed. That would provide us more insight into how the dollars are coming in, how much you're actually getting from the bonds, and how much are being dispersed as part of the issue itself. So we have that detail on each of these scenarios for you.
Yeah, and ergo, you'll see a small increase in the coupon value at the very end. That's merely a incentive for the investors on the back end. But you know, you're looking at years down the road. Who knows what the yield was going to be? I don't want to get down to the minutiae of bond markets. It's kind of complicated, but this is what we're guaranteeing where it says coupon. That's the guarantee of the bond, and that's our responsibility. Am I correct there, Joe?
You are correct, Russ. Yep. And also just add to my comment as well about the detail behind this, not only for the details behind the par amount of the issue, but also the details behind the pricing as well. So we do in fact have the yields for each and every one of these maturities.
Mhm. Okay, and could you discuss a little further, like when we go down to the amortization schedule here, it looks like the interest rate around 2043, there's like it goes like 2.125. Could you just explain to council what that all means? And you know, it pops up in a couple of years after that to like 2046. It goes up to another point.
Yeah, and this is Phil, and I would just say, just think of it as the farther you go out in maturity, the more risk there is for the investor.
Right.
So, you know, your first 20 years, you know, obviously repayment in year 2, a lot less of risk than repayment in year 20. But, you know, as you get out to, you know, year 20, our underwriter, our desk thinks we'll need to add a little extra incentive, a little extra juice to get investors on the back end. And so it really just comes down to, theoretically, that money is more at risk, right? Because it's 25 years out in the future. So they increase the return to the investor.
Because there's more of a likelihood that we could just pay it off, right?
That too is another, because yes, in, you know, whatever the call feature would be, they lose all that, you know, that interest that they thought they were going to earn years, you know, 6 through 30 or whatever it may be.
Right.
I actually just had a really quick question for the Huntington team. What is the average inflation rate currently?
In what context?
So I know typically from what I hear from my financial advisors and everybody else I talk to, inflation usually whenever you figure out financing, inflation usually seems to stick around between 2 to 3%. So on a conservative side, usually you plan out utilizing 3% inflation. So looking at these, even 2.25%, we're still below that inflation rate. In reality, that means we're making more. Our dollar fares further.
Yeah,
we're buying money, and this is what it costs.
Yep.
I mean,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I think that you know, we're overcomplicating this.
right.
We're overcomplicating this. I think, you know, basically we listen to our managers. I mean, certainly stepped whichever way we go makes the most amount of sense, because we don't know how long it's going to take to come out of COVID. And, you know, where I tend to look a faster repayment, the points have been made, and listening to our managers, that I think that it just makes a whole lot of sense to go into the 30-year stepped. And if we want to get more educated about bonds, we don't necessarily need to do it tonight.
Right. So, all right. So I think we're in good shape here, and Coletta, you voiced support for option or scenario 2A. Do I hear any other thoughts from council? Mike, you've been pretty quiet. What's your thought?
I think Mike dropped off.
Okay, I know he had.
No, he's here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's here. He's muted.
Oh, okay. I didn't see him at the bottom there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the participants list.
Ed, you were pretty quiet.
Actually, I do have a question. In terms of our overall debt ceiling, what the Commonwealth permits us to borrow, uh, is interest calculated in that as well, or just the overall amount?
Just the overall amount.
All right. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand. I mean, we have concerns with COVID, especially now as who knows if next year, for example, we make a agreement or we advise our property owners that we are gonna let them pay at the end of the year again. I can definitely see the appeal of the stepped. And if we have it in the budget to be able to pay it off at 25, I'm okay with that. So I can definitely get on board with, I believe it was 1B. Yes.
Yeah, I was looking at, I think, at the 30-year maturity.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that Doug mentioned very early on is that there, after 5 years, there's no penalty for paying early. And, you know, what it is going to be most likely is that 10 years in, if the borough is doing well, as we've talked about, there are probably a number of other streets that we're going to have to do this heavy reconstruction on. So if we're on target, what we might find ourselves in 10 years is going back out to redo, say, another 9 or 10, pay this off. And that's the most likely scenario that I can see happening. And with no penalty for early payment, if we aren't going to do that, we can certainly put ourselves in later years on a schedule to pay early if we want to. But I think that as the manager has suggested, 30-year stepped gives us the most amount of flexibility, and especially giving us a few years not only to take a couple of big hits on the economy and our EIT and late and delinquent property taxes, but it gives us really a good amount. And then what I'm looking at is that then if we go 25 years, we're saddling later councils and later budgets with a good chunk more per year. And I think we could find, it's possible that we could find ourselves pinched a little.
Yeah, I'm supportive of scenario 2A.
So what does our management team need from us tonight in order to proceed?
We need to know what scenario makes the most sense for all of you. Again, for the 2021 budget, which we're not going to get into tonight at all, our guesses on revenue are guesses. You watched the news tonight. Maybe I used the line before. I don't know who to invite for Thanksgiving, based on everything we're seeing. And so 2021 is going to be a very difficult year. And maybe 2022, I have no idea, based on everything I'm seeing. But our revenue guesses are a guess. And we can't base it on 2020 years or 2019 income. So to Coletta's point, and I appreciate her point, the idea of not throwing this number right out there, bang, here we go, but let us go into it knowing that every municipality and everybody else is just saying, wow, what are we going to make next year? And where's the money going to come from? This allows us to do that. That would be my only recommendation. Again, it's council's decision.
So Phil, should we just go around and just ask every council member which one they want to go with and tally it up?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do there. I was trying to get Mike to chime in. He's been quiet.
And if I could just briefly, to piggyback off of what Russ said, yes, I think I love you too. I think that what I would recommend is the 2A scenario, the stepped, and increase a mill, half on general and half on road for next year. And that gives us the most flexibility and the most liquidity that we need to address any issues with the a possible economic downturn with the COVID. We don't know where we're at, but that gives us the most flexibility. So I would go 2A with a mill increase.
Okay, so can I ask what a mill represents in Crafton at this point?
Approximately $250,000.
So basically what we're saying is if we raise a mill, that we're going to be doing the debt service out of the increase for the first couple of years.
Yes.
Yes.
What does that look like for the average household? Let's say.
So a
average
mill.
1,000.
So if your valuation is $150,000, it's $150. If your valuation on your house is $250,000, it's $250.
$50. That's right.
So basically, you're talking at $250. You're just over $20 a month.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Correct.
All right.
So what do we actually need to do? Because from my understanding is I remember, I think that we raised, I think we raised the road fund a bit just before I came on council, maybe about 6 years ago, but I wasn't on council then, so I don't remember exactly what the process was.
If I may, the problem with millage, by definition, is what people think a mill is.
Right.
It's not $1 million,
Right.
and that creates a problem. But what we do have, we have increases in salaries, we have increases in expenses. Our contractors are paying their people more money, et cetera, et cetera. But we have no mechanism in place to raise revenue because we don't have increase in assessments other than when a property sells.
Right.
So, I don't know, you can use your home, I could use my home. I've been assessed at the same value since they did the original assessments in the county 14 years ago. Well,
That's the last time mine went up.
okay, and mine as well. But that doesn't equate with reality. Reality is things have gone up, but our assessments do not go up in the borough, in the county. Again, only when there's a sale of a home. And how many sales do you have? So the only way you have to raise revenue to equate with expenses going up is the quote unquote millage rate. And
Right.
to your point, Coletta, you hit it right on the nose. 1 mill generates $100 for 100,000 assessed. Go on your assessment and look what your assessed value is. If it's 150,000, to your point, it's $150 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Put it down monthly, et cetera, et cetera. Did your income go up more? That's the hard part about this millage rate thing.
Right.
For so many people, including us, to get across in some shape. The services cost more money. The contracts have gone up. People are getting 2 or 3% raises a year. Healthcare goes up, et cetera, et cetera. The only mechanism we have is to raise millage if the assessed value with our reliance on property tax, and that's something we have to deal with as a borough. That's all we have. That's the only mechanism we have. And those are the decisions. They're tough decisions for council. I understand that. I've been around for 40 years in municipal work, and I get it. Trust me. And but your points are right on.
But essentially, I mean, yes, we're going to be paying maybe $100, $200 more a year, but we're getting a significant value with our entire community being revitalized.
But we have to, Anthony, it goes off of assessment. So not everyone's going to pay based on that scenario. So let's not send out any disinformation to our own community here.
No. What I'm saying is we're doing this not because we're trying to cover expenses that we aren't able to cover. We're doing this because we're investing in our community. So we're actually going to be able to see our tax dollars at work. When you see new roads, new recreation facilities, and stuff being really added value into the community.
Right. We're
Two
maintaining
messages
it.
going
Right.
here.
Yeah.
We got
So,
two messages.
all right. So looking here, I was trying to get Mike to chime in here because I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. But I hear a consensus to go with 2A. So the manager and assistant manager can work with the Huntington team, and we can finish up the budget, because that's what this is all about this evening, is to get council's input. So when we get to the next budget meeting, they are have minimal issues that they're hearing from us, and we can get to passing this budget, and they can continue on with all the requirements to move down the path here with securing the bond. So do I hear anything else? Any opposition? Any major concerns with the path that we've discussed this evening?
We can bring firm numbers to you, knowing that if that's the direction, we'll have firm numbers for the Wednesday meeting following Thanksgiving. We have 2 Wednesday sessions before the December meeting where a budget needs to be passed. But knowing that, that'll help us a lot.
How long do we need for advertising?
15 days? Doug?
Yeah, for the ordinances, and then the bond, we've
Well, we're talking
selected.
about budget. We're talking about budget, which is
Budget.
the most
Oh,
important
but
thing.
I'm
Just
sorry.
talk
Okay.
about budget.
Yes, we'll advertise the ordinances for the real estate millage, the budget itself, and it's, I believe it's a 20-day review period. I'll have to double check that.
So we want to pass a budget on December 14th, which means we have to have approval so that we can advertise it before the end of this month. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so we don't have 2 more meetings.
Yeah, we would have to do next Wednesday.
All right. I mean, I just don't want to get to next Wednesday
Yeah.
and, oh my God, we're not going to get it done.
No,
So-
I understand.
Okay, so the question, so basically, we need to try and, if we want to pass a budget by December 14th, we need to agree on the budget next Wednesday so that it can be advertised. Now, are we under any obligation to, at the very same time, advertise? I mean, that's what was my question was, if we are going to raise the millage, does that has to happen by ordinance? And we are under the same restrictions. And when does that have to be done by?
Well, again, we're not, I kind of misspoke. I was
Okay.
just thinking December the 14th would be the ideal time to do it, but we do have the final meeting on December the 28th, so.
Yeah, well, and generally speaking, we try not to have that meeting.
Exactly.
We try to do it on the
Exactly.
meeting before Christmas. So let's see if we can back it up and do it that way. Since we all seem to be, we've had a number of meetings, we've had our say, you guys have been working your tails off, and it's in pretty good shape. So, it's like, so let's look at that timeline to say, okay, what do we have to do next Wednesday? And in order to, if we're going to have a millage increase, does that have to be adopted before the first of the year? What are those requirements?
We'll have that all mapped out for a meeting on Monday.
Yes.
And yeah, so that we can actually advertise the budget probably at our Monday meeting. And then we do have the ability to make small changes to it as it goes forward before we actually adopt it.
Okay, so then,
Hopefully.
okay, so basically we can authorize to advertise the budget and the millage increase.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, that
Now-
would be the idea. We have a lot to do on Monday, but we could definitely get that done,
okay,
knowing what we know now.
okay.
Yes.
So then this borrowing the bond, is that have to go through ordinance as well?
That'll be an action item on Monday as well.
Okay, and that has to go through ordinance as well.
That has to be an action item. I'll have the language that'll be given to me by the Huntington Group for everybody.
It doesn't have to be an ordinance. We can just approve it. Is that what you're saying? Or you don't-
It will be done by ordinance, and
Correct.
bond council will draft that ordinance, and bond
Correct.
council will advertise that, and yes.
Okay, so it sounds as though we're trying to do all three to move forward before the end of the year? Yes?
Yes.
For sure.
Okay, all right. So then with the ordinance, all of those require public input?
At Monday's meeting, correct.
No, well, they get to say what they want to say about it on Monday, but if we move forward to advertise the ordinance by ordinance, so the night that we're supposed to pass it, it's public,
Correct.
we have to have public comment. which
Correct.
We're gonna have three ordinances that are gonna be contentious and that we should be expecting public comment.
I don't see they're contentious. I disagree with that.
Well, the point is, like, I agree with Colin. We need to make sure we have ample time to hear public comment.
Right.
Coletta?
So,
So
question.
my question is do we have, okay, so we've got a budget that it needs to get out,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Does the millage increase have to be done at the same time? Does that need, in order to go into effect next year, does that have to be adopted before the end of the year?
That was my understanding.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
They
just
work
needs
simultaneously,
clarification.
See
Okay,
Again, if we-
how infrequently we raise taxes, Coletta?
I know.
No, if we have to push the final meeting back to the 28th, we will do that. I mean,
Well, hey, none of us are going to be traveling, right?
Right.
I
Just
mean,
assume.
we have 2 meetings in December. We're just, we're trying to get, there is a push here. I agree with you. I don't want to push it too hard. If we have a meeting on the 28th, like we would normally have, 3 days after Christmas, but before New Year's, where everybody's traveling all over the world, yes. But if not, then we can have a better scheduled time.
Okay,
If-
well, I just wanted, to kind of
No,
get the groundwork.
I understand. You're right.
So basically, if we move all those on Monday, then we should come to December 4th, 14th, wait a minute. Yeah, December 14th meeting,
14th.
planning to have the patience to listen to the community.
Yep. Concur.
It'll be much like last year where the last meeting was very long.
No, it won't, because we're gonna have a really nice meeting, Anthony. We need good vibes to end the year, and that's not how I want to end the year.
So basically, between now and then, it's important for us to put the information out there and to help our constituents understand. And we should definitely have a better result if we all do that.
Doug and I will work very, very hard to make sure that information is out to everybody as soon as possible, now that we know which direction to go, and have everything out for Monday's meeting.
Okay. All right.
I can promise.
Well, I really appreciate the hour and a half that we spent together this evening. And just as a final note, the Huntington team, you guys can jump off, but I think we're all aware of what's happening in the region with COVID. We're working with our partners at the county and the state level, and I'll call an executive session before our next meeting to go over anything that the manager needs to with regards to our safety plan moving into December.
Okay,
All
so
right.
we don't need no executive after this then.
Yeah, Manager McKibben, I know you had a long night. Do you want to discuss this evening, or is next Monday okay?
Actually, there's nothing I can discuss that would have to go into executive session anyway, and I don't have enough information
Okay,
to even comment on it, even at that point. So things are very fluid right now, and to your point, yes, it's been a long day, and I appreciate you understanding that. Thank you.
we should plan on executive session before our meeting on Monday.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Joe, John, and Philip, thank you very much for your time this evening. We look forward to working with your
Thank you,
team.
guys.
Thank you.
all right, good night, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're
night,
very
everyone.
welcome. Have a great
Hey,
night.
hey,
Thank you,
Doug,
everyone.
before you go, or Russ, did anyone ever figure out what happened with the recycling yesterday, 2 days ago?